All right, so I'm going to do my trade review today, mainly just over Sava. Um, but not only am I going to do the trade review, I'm just going to go over a couple things in terms of playbooking it, and I think you guys will find it interesting. Um, so, Sava was a really good trending stock today, um, and so let me see what I want to go over here. So, um, I wanted to go over kind of how I set it up to kind of understand what it could do. First of all, I mean, it had high RVOL this morning. Like it had 1.5 million shares. Jay called it out as having 25% of its normal shares already being traded, which that's another thing actually that we should all talk about, which is like, how do we find out RVOL in the pre-market? Because DAS doesn't tell us that. But maybe Jay had a way of doing it there by saying 25% of its normal average volume has already been traded. So maybe we just use how many shares have been traded as a fraction of what's its normal average. However, depending on where we're at in the morning, it might not help us. But if it's 9 a.m. and it's clearly it's clearly high. I think if it's clearly much higher than normal compared as a fraction, I think we'll be able to tell, okay, this is clearly more than normal, even if it's only 8 a.m. or 9 a.m. But anyways, Jay called it out, had a lot of volume. So there was something going on with it, and it was a letter of the company um, defending the allegations about their fraudulent claims and et cetera, et cetera. However, it was news, but come to find out, connecting with the technical analysis on the chart, I think it was the perfect news, and Jay put it as calling it the texture of the news. I think the texture of the news was perfect for the technical setup, which means that I don't think that it was substantial news. You know, it wasn't that like huge fundamental news, but it was enough news to where clearly there was high volume, and there was a lot of people getting involved in it. So sorry to do that intro, but um, so I just want to go over this image here of what I was seeing on Sava. So I'm really trying to do this with every stock that I look at, and I go, okay, if it's in play this morning, so let's backtrack and look left and see what it's done. And so what I've been doing is I go to the first or the most recent expansion that it's done, or in other words, the most recent breakout, whether it's break up or break down, because that's where a lot of volume and that's where a lot of players, came in. So last week or 2 weeks ago, you can see 3 days it expanded down. So we had a breakdown, and then it broke down again, and then it broke down, gap down again. And what I want to say was, you never know when expansion is done. You can say, well, maybe expansion is done on this day, but you really don't know until the next day has pretty much finished. So I don't know if you guys understand that, but like sure, we could see climactic volume on this second day of selling off, but um, you know, we really have to see the next day to find out if it was an isolated pivot and a turnaround. So basically, on this third day, we had another expansion down. It did rip up probably higher than. I mean, you can see here it even ripped up high here too. So we're still not sure, but it did rip up high. And then on this next day, it did not continue to go lower. So now you can say, okay, it's slowing down here, and now we might have a compression. So, but on this day, when it finally stopped selling off down, confirmed with this next day, you see that this had the most volume. So I create that range or that value area from here to here, because that's got the most volume, and price almost gets trapped in here, and you can play breakouts above it, below it, or bounces within it, right? And so I think as the days went on, it set up for the perfect move here. So for multiple days, it had small ATR moves, right? With these yellow boxes, you can see how, for the most part, the value ranges were, and the ATRs were much smaller, and they were almost getting smaller and smaller. And so when that happens, I think it gets harder to trade. But I think it's building, right? It's building for another either a break down or a break up. So what happened on this day though was that we had a lot of volume and price was near the top here. It was near the $65 around 8:30 a.m. So there's a couple things here. We had high R vol, stock was moving and grooving, but it was still within this big range. Okay, so it wasn't broken out yet. So technically we're not above 65 yet, so we haven't broken out is what I'm saying. It's not along until it's above this nice level here. And the other thing is, if you notice, price was more, the ranges in these consolidations were happening more down here. So it was actually towards the bottom of this bigger range down here before the news came out in the morning, and then price went all the way from 52 up to about 64, which is almost a full ATR. Here's an ATR right here, or at least this was the average 14 days, which is $12. So we had huge high R vol this morning, which when it opened, it ended up being like 400+%, which is great. So you had huge volume in the pre-market. Price went all the way from the bottom to the top, but was still underneath 65. And then you had the texture of the news, which is not an amazing fundamental increase catalyst. It was just enough to clearly bring in buyers and sellers. So what I did was I played the resistance. I played the resistance bounce here. Okay, and I think this is better than normal resistance bounces because you have the high R vol, you have the really good level, which I'm going to make this level probably a 9 out of 10. Here's what it looked like in the pre-market here. So it went all the way up, and it didn't quite hit the 65, but it did hit 64, and it made a bit of like a reversal head and shoulders, however you want to say it. It clearly resisted up here. Okay. Price opened a bit down here. So the thing about this one is it didn't flush. It didn't give you that flush up here and give you that entry up here and make a big double top. Okay, well, that's all right. But what I've been noticing is with like AMC and with some of these other stocks that they've been hitting these nice resistance ranges in the pre-market. Here's another one of AMC just the other day. If you guys remember, AMC had a really nice sell down. And I'm pretty sure this stock ended up coming all the way down to $43 on this day. Well, it hit that nice 10 out of 10 important level in the pre-market and didn't give you that flush up. But what I'm trying to say is we're not always going to get that perfect entry, but I think that overall, if we see it setting up and we see the big move happening, we just have to play what it can give us, right? Which is maybe a VWAP pullback. It makes a big low and then comes all the way back to VWAP, then you get in short or, something. But so another thing that I wanted to do was just sort of talk about how the news worked perfectly with the movement, because you had a great expansion down, and then you had a great expansion down. Hold on here. Okay, so instead of going over it in like days like this, I'm just going to make 3 candles, like 3, multi-day candles. Like one candle is worth multiple days. So you have your expansion down, your breakdown candle, right? And you can just say that was the candle. And then you have your indecision doji candle, right? And then you have your next down candle, right? So this technically, you could look at this whole thing as one big, 3-bar play. this being the first bar, this being the doji, and then the beginning of the continuation is right on the top of this doji right here, and this is where the news comes in. So the news shows up right here and gives it that volume to break the doji and then to keep going like that. Because today price went all the way down and even got below this today. I think it came back up, but I'm not sure. I don't even think it got back in this range. So it technically broke out of the range here. So if you envision all of this as a 3-bar play, that's sort of what it did. And I just thought it was cool because, if we're playing a 3-bar play long, we go big green candle, say we're doing a 1 ORB or something, big green candle, a little pullback candle, right? Maybe VWAP is right here. And then you have your next green candle with volume. A lot of times we'll play the entry right here, right? With the stop underneath, maybe this candle or our new candle here under VWAP. But in this case, we would have gotten in long right here, right at the best spot because the news came in right here. So it's like you get your 3-bar play, 1, 2, and then news comes in, and you get long right here, and then you go long. So it's just like the perfect spot. I don't know if that even makes fucking sense, but I just think it's like we have to combine every single time frame, and we have to be like juggling it. We have to juggle the 1 minute, the 5 minute, the 60 minute, the daily, the weekly, the trend, all of that. And you really do juggle it all. And it's like a fucking orchestra of knowing within this time frame it's doing this, within this time frame it could potentially do that. And we almost need to know the probabilities for every time frame. So I think that's why I go back to looking at a 1 minute candle, because I always remember those, ABCDs or 3-bar plays, and it's all the same thing, just in different time frames. So when you look at this big movement over multi-weeks, it's sort of doing that same 3-bar play or ABCD, etc. Only, since it takes weeks, we use the news catalyst to kind of tell us, okay, this 3-bar play could potentially is starting now, right? Because like on a normal 1 minute candle, you get your down move, you get your doji, and then you get your down move again. Well, we normally don't get in until right here because we're just hoping, we're seeing some volume kick. So we have a lot of volume, we have slowing volume on the pullback, and then volume starts to kick in, and it seems like as soon as it breaks this doji, we get more volume, and as soon as it breaks this, we get an even new low and even more volume. But in this setup here, we get the luxury of seeing the volume down move, we get the doji, and then while price is sitting right here before even starting the move, we get the news right here. And we see the R-vol, high R-vol, and it's not breaking this doji, or it's not breaking the high of this or whatever. So we get in short here, and then we've already caught it. We've caught the start of the big move. You get down here, etc. Maybe we'll get this all in one day, or maybe you'll get it over multiple days. But it's the start of the continuation of the expansion. You know what I mean? So I just think this is an awesome, down, doji, gets the news. We're done being in this doji. We're going down hard. Boom! Within a day, we're down. By the end of the day, we're even below it up here, and then hopefully tomorrow we'll be gap down, or maybe somewhere on this low, etc. Based on the weekly and the monthly, and that'll determine how far it really can go down. You know what I mean? So maybe we've had multiple expansions down, and this is like I said, bigger time frame. So maybe over monthly time frames, you'd say, well, this all works great. But then you look at the big monthly time frame, and this is maybe the third big expansion down in the last month. Well, we might be getting extended on a monthly, and so maybe we don't make too much of an expansion again. We eventually teeter out down here, and then a whole new thing starts where we start to go back up. But so that's just a different time frame. But I think within this time frame, you see boom, range, news, boom, and then it might even be a swing to hold. And I almost held some shares. I'm still working on this, but I just thought that was really cool. And just look what it did. I mean, here's the daily. You had your multiple expansions down. multiple expansions down. You slow down with this climactic volume, get your multiple days, ranges, and then look right at the top of this resistance. So Kyle's talking about what is the trend, and I think that's helping too, because the trend is down, right? Trend is going down. So this is sort of a trend trade as well, because you have the trend on your side. So you have trending down, you have your pullback range, you get your news right here at the fucking perfect spot, which actually pre-market was up here at 60. Pre-market was up here at 65, so really it was right here. So pre-market was right here, which is where the news happened. Actually, the news happened in the middle of the night here, but price went all the way back up, hit it, came all the way down, and then even blew through the bottom of this. So it's the start of maybe a new expansion. But yeah, like Kyle says, this is the trend. So the trend is down, pull back, and that's the after the pullback has occurred, you get the news, and then you go and you continue. So you could call it lots of different things. You could say this is daily range resistance, which I think it is, or you could say on a bigger time frame, like on a weekly, this is a trend down pullback. You could even swing this as a weekly swing trend down pullback type of, you're playing a continuation. And that news can just be the start of the entry, And so real quick, I just want to kind of compare and contrast that Sava sell-off at a daily resistance to this AMC version of it. Now AMC is different because AMC was a bit of an uptrend, right? So we had this breakout day, another topping day here, and then it came down, and then it came right back up to this really nice clear resistance, right? And so I wanted to show you the image here on how this resistance sell-off was different than Sava's, right? So Sava's, you had the expansion down, stopped expanding, and then compressed, but then hit the resistance up here, and then shot down. Whereas AMC came up, stopped expanding, started to compress. You could say it pulled back quite a bit and then compressed here. ATR is getting smaller and smaller. And then in the pre-market hits this top here. And, I don't know if there was news here, but I do remember that this was, when it opened, it was 150% R vol, I believe. And so, but this is kind of the same thing. Like, it just hits a nice, clear, important level on the daily that had a lot of volume, and but hit in the pre-market. But then this bad boy sold all the way down to $43, which was sort of the range of what this had created. But this was on a trending up stock, so this was like almost like, so I would envision this as sort of a double top if you were just thinking about, like, if you're just thinking of 1 minute candles or a couple different candles, I would just say this is one top, and you're like, okay, maybe it's continuing, hits another top, and then no, it fails, and then you get your short here, maybe on an intraday chart, 1 minute. That's kind of how I envision that, as like a double top. Yeah. And so here's this NEO one. So these are the three that, I don't know, I'm just somehow kind of connecting and contrasting, which is the NEO, the Sava, and the AMC. NEO recently had been downtrending, so you had your expansion down here, and then it eventually stopped expanding, created a higher low here, which sort of aligned with this low here, and then you had, sort of a head and shoulders, and so this was now the kind of the bottom of the value area, and you had yourself a range now, and it was compressing, right? So it was compressing for days as it stayed within this, kept topping out up here, and it bottomed out there, and then bottomed out here. Okay, so then news comes out. Okay, so Sava, if you remember, came down, was down here, and then news came out, which made it sort of positive again, shot up here, and then you had yourself a nice fade short with high volume. Whereas Neo had negative news, so it expanded down, started at range, was actually near the top up here. Then some negative news came out about not selling enough units or not having some. Yeah, they weren't going to sell out as many units as they thought, etc. And so we were near the top, and then we had negative news, which shot it all the way down in the pre-market. So it's sort of the opposite of what happened with Saba. Went from one end of the range to the other in the pre-market. So went all the way down here. But look, we stayed inside this level. So to me, this is a very important level. You know, maybe 9 out of 10. Just because it went below it here, I'll give it a 9. And then up here is probably a 10 to me because of how perfect it was topping it out and not getting above it here. So what I'm saying is you have the catalyst, you have this big move in the pre-market, it's sort of extended that way. You haven't broken underneath 37, so it's not a short yet, even though you have a high R-vol. And had we gapped down below here with high R-vol, maybe we would have taken a nice, you know, continuation of the expansion, right? The down, the range, and then gapping down with continued negative news, and then we continue down. However, it wasn't that. It gapped down, but it stayed inside this important range. And so you have all this higher R-vol. And so if it can't go down past 37, what is it going to do? Well, you're going to get a really nice move the other way. Most of the time when you have these high R-vol days with really good stocks, these stocks don't stay still. They want to move. And if they can't get, if they're right next to a good level and they can't break it, they're going to sure as hell go the other way. So this is a perfect support play, sort of against the trend though, because, you know, trend was down, made this range, but anyways, it had high R-vol, it was above 37, and I think it compressed on this day up against 38, which is sort of the inflection of this range, compressed against 38 here, and then broke out, and look, clearly just super fast, within half the day got up to $40-ish, which is resistance, failed it, came around, next day, had enough continuation volume, pulled back just to, so this is perfect because this was basically potential new value that was created here, small value within the bigger time frame, pulled back, couldn't continue back down because it didn't want to, this news was still positive, bounced, and then continued past $40, and you got another great move. So you got 2 days here. You got your day one play and then your day two play. And these are great when you have these news catalysts that show up inside the ranges like this. I think these are even better because they're not gapped out in the middle of fucking nowhere, you know? They're against levels that we already know and we can already see and that are super fresh. So we have this perfect trend and then this perfect range, and then boom, we get this awesome catalyst news, and we get to play against these really good levels. You just play these fucking levels, and then we use the momentum to continue them, and then this is its own day one play with our levels to play around, and then day two, still up here. What is it going to do? Is it going to come up and bounce and sell down? No, it held here, came up, broke through that with volume. You play that for the fucking breakout. And this whole thing ends up being, you know, a 3-bar play right here. You know, in my mind, this is these are 1 minute candles. This is one. This is a doji, and then it holds the bottom of this doji. Boom, breaks out again. You could take it long here, or you could take it long here, right? So, I just think all of these are really good because we have these fresh levels in these really good ranges, and then you get the catalyst and the news when we're around them. I just think that's the time to trade them, or the time to maybe get in as a swing too. Like this is trending down, but then it stops going down. We get some news, it holds this, we put in some position, and then now it's trending up again, you know, so I think that's pretty cool too.